Commander Vexler of the Dominion fleet stood at the observation window of his flagship, watching the blue and green planet below. Earth. The humans called it Earth. For 3 cycles now, his forces had been fighting these strange creatures, and in all his years of conquest, he had never encountered a species quite like them. The Dominion had conquered 47 worlds. They had defeated species with superior technology, species with greater numbers, species with natural weapons built into their very bodies. But humans were different, not because they were stronger or smarter or more advanced. They were different because they made no sense at all. Vexler turned from the window as his second-in-command, Krathel, entered the command center. The younger officer's gray skin was pale, and his 4 eyes blinked rapidly. This was a sign of distress among their kind. His clawed hands were clasped tightly together, and his breathing was shallow and quick. "Commander," Krathel said, "we have received another report from the surface. You need to see this immediately." Vexler followed Krathel to the holographic display. The image showed a human military base captured by their spy drones, but what the drones showed made no sense. Dominion prisoners were sitting at tables with human soldiers. They were eating together. They were laughing together. Some were even playing games, moving pieces across a checkered board while others watched with interest. "What is this?" Vexler demanded, his voice sharp with confusion. "It appears to be some kind of gathering, Commander. The humans captured these warriors 2 days ago. Since then, they have not been harmed. They have not been questioned with force. They have been fed, given clean clothes, allowed to rest." Vexler studied the image more closely. One of the captured Dominion soldiers was a young male named Trelvok. Vexler knew him. He was barely past his maturation cycle, sent to fight because the Dominion needed every warrior they could get. In the image, Trelvok was sitting next to a human female in uniform. She was showing him something on a small device, pointing at the screen and making gestures. Trelvok's mandibles were spread wide, which among their kind indicated joy or amusement. "This is impossible," Vexler said. "These are prisoners of war. Why are they not in cells? Why are they not being interrogated for information? Why are they not being used for labor?" "I do not know, Commander, but there is more, much more." Krathel changed the display. Now it showed a medical facility. Dominion wounded were lying on beds, and human medical personnel were treating them, not experimenting on them, not harvesting their organs for study, treating them, healing them. A human doctor was carefully stitching a wound on a Dominion warrior's side, while another human held the warrior's hand and spoke soothing words. "One of our wounded was in critical condition," Krathel reported. "The humans performed surgery for 6 hours to save his life. They used their own blood supplies because Dominion blood types are similar enough to human type O negative. They did not ask for anything in return. They did not demand information or loyalty. They simply saved his life because he needed saving." Vexler felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Confusion. Real, deep confusion. His mind struggled to process what he was seeing. In his entire military career, spanning decades of conquest across dozens of worlds, he had never witnessed anything like this. In the Dominion, prisoners were resources. They were used for labor, for information extraction, for whatever purpose served the conquest. When they were no longer useful, they were disposed of. This was the way of things. This was how war worked across the galaxy. Every species the Dominion had encountered followed similar practices. Some were crueler, some were more efficient, but the basic principle was the same. Prisoners had no value except what could be extracted from them. But humans did not follow this principle. Humans were doing something completely different, something that violated every rule of warfare that Vexler had ever known. "Get me Field Commander Drexel," Vexler ordered. "I need to speak with him directly, now." It took several minutes to establish the secure communication link through the planet's atmosphere. When Drexel's face appeared on the screen, he looked tired. His scales were dull, his eyes heavy. Fighting humans was exhausting work, even for a veteran like him who had served in a dozen campaigns. "Commander," Drexel greeted him with a formal salute. "I assume you are calling about the prisoner situation." "Explain to me what is happening down there, Drexel. Why are our captured soldiers not being treated as prisoners? Why do they look healthier now than when they were captured?" Drexel made a sound that Vexler recognized as a sigh. It was a sound of exhaustion, but also of something else. Wonder, perhaps. "Because the humans do not treat prisoners the way we do, Commander. They have something called the Geneva Conventions. It is a set of rules for how they conduct war." "Rules? They have rules for war? That is absurd. War is chaos. War is destruction. How can you have rules for such a thing?" "Yes, rules. Laws that protect captured soldiers, wounded soldiers, and civilians. They have prohibitions against torture, against forced labor, against execution of prisoners. They are required by their own codes to provide medical care to enemy wounded. They must give prisoners adequate food, clean water, and shelter. They are forbidden from using prisoners for dangerous work." Vexler was silent for a long moment. His mind raced through the implications. "This is a trick. It must be. They are trying to turn our soldiers against us. They are using kindness as a weapon." "That is what I thought at first," Drexel admitted. "But I have been observing them closely for many weeks now. I have even spoken with some of our soldiers who were captured and later released." "Released? They released our soldiers?" "Yes, Commander. The humans released them, sent them back to us with their wounds healed and their bodies fed. They said the soldiers had given their word not to fight again, and the humans believed them. They simply trusted the word of their enemies." Vexler sat down heavily in his command chair. This was too much information to process while standing. His legs felt weak beneath him, which had never happened before in his life. "Tell me what our soldiers reported," he said. "Tell me everything." Drexel's expression changed. It became thoughtful, almost wondering. There was something in his eyes that Vexler had never seen there before. "They said the humans shared food with them, not prison rations, real food. The same food the humans eat themselves. Cooked meat, fresh vegetables, sweet desserts. They said the humans asked about their families, their homes, their lives before the war. They showed genuine interest. They remembered names and details and asked follow-up questions." "Why would they do this?" "The humans played games with them, taught them human songs, showed them pictures of human children and pets and homes. One human soldier spent hours teaching a captured warrior to play a musical instrument, a stringed device that makes pleasant sounds." Vexler shook his head slowly. "This defies all logic. What purpose does it serve?" "I asked the same question to one of the released prisoners, a warrior named Grechtel who had been held for 3 weeks. Do you know what he told me? He said a human soldier told him that they were all just people caught up in something bigger than themselves. The human said that when the war was over, the soldiers on both sides would have to find a way to live together, so they might as well start now." "You think that is possible, living together with an enemy after war?" "I did not think so, Commander, but Grechtel believed it. After 3 weeks with the humans, he believed it was possible. He said the humans made him believe it." Vexler leaned back in his chair. In all his years of conquest, no species had ever spoken to him about what would happen after the war. For the Dominion, there was no after. There was only victory or death. The conquered either served or were destroyed. There was no living together. There was no peace except the peace of submission. "There is more, Commander," Drexel continued. "Something I witnessed myself, something that has stayed with me and will not leave my thoughts." "Tell me." "One of our young soldiers, barely more than a hatchling, was badly wounded in battle. His name was Krelver. He was 18 cycles old on his first campaign. He had been hit by shrapnel and was dying slowly. He was crying for his mother, calling her name over and over." Drexel paused, his voice thick with emotion. "A human soldier, a female named Sergeant Williams, held him while the medics worked. She did not know our language, but she sang to him. human songs, soft and gentle. She stroked his head plates with careful hands. She told him he would be all right, even though she knew he might not be, even though he was her enemy. And what happened to him? He died despite their efforts. His wounds were too severe, but he died in her arms, not alone on a battlefield. And when he died, Sergeant Williams wept over his body, real tears. She cried for him as if he were her own child. She wept for an enemy. She said he was not an enemy anymore. She said he was just a scared child who died far from home. She said that was a tragedy, no matter what side he was on. She said no mother should lose a child to war. Vexler stared at the image on the screen, where Dominion prisoners were still sharing a meal with human soldiers. One of the humans was teaching a captured warrior how to use eating utensils, laughing gently at his clumsy attempts. Another was wrapping a bandage around a wounded arm with gentle, careful hands. A third was showing pictures on a portable device, pointing at different figures and explaining who they were. Drexel, Vexler said slowly, I want you to observe more, record everything. I want to understand these humans, because I am beginning to think that we have badly misunderstood what we are dealing with. Yes, Commander, I will send regular reports. And Drexel, the soldier who died, the young one, what did the humans do with his body? Drexel was quiet for a moment. They buried him with military honors, Commander, full ceremony. They folded a flag and placed it on his grave. They fired weapons into the air in salute. They stood in silence while a human religious leader spoke words of peace. They treated him as they would treat one of their own fallen. After the communication ended, Vexler remained in his chair for a long time. The stars moved slowly past the observation window as the flagship orbited the planet. He had conquered worlds. He had commanded fleets that blotted out the sky. He had overseen the destruction of entire civilizations, but he had never encountered anything like this. The humans were not fighting to conquer. They were not fighting to destroy. They were fighting to protect their home, yes, but they were also doing something else. They were fighting while holding onto something that his people had lost long ago if they had ever possessed it at all. He did not have a word for it in his language, but he knew that whatever it was, it made the humans more dangerous than any species he had ever faced, because you could break an army, you could destroy a fleet, you could burn cities and shatter civilizations. But how did you defeat an enemy that refused to stop seeing you as a person? 3 days later, Vexler made a decision that surprised even himself. He ordered a shuttle prepared. He was going to the surface. He was going to see these humans for himself. His advisors told him it was too dangerous. They gathered in his command center and argued for hours. His guards protested, swearing oaths that they would not allow him to place himself in such danger. Even Krathel looked at him with all 4 eyes wide with shock. Commander, this is madness, Krathel said. They will capture you. They will interrogate you. You know secrets that could destroy our entire campaign, the locations of our supply lines, the strength of our reserves, the timing of our planned offensives. If I wanted to understand them from up here, I could do that, Vexler replied calmly. But I do not understand them. I cannot comprehend their behavior from orbit. I need to see them with my own eyes. I need to smell their air and feel their ground beneath my feet. I need to look into their faces and try to understand. At least take a full security detachment, 50 warriors at minimum. No, I will take only Krathel as my aide. Any more would be a sign of fear. The shuttle descended through the atmosphere, escorted by fighter craft that peeled away as they approached the neutral zone. Vexler had sent a message ahead, requesting a meeting under a flag of truce. To his surprise, the humans had agreed without hesitation. They had even sent coordinates and assured him of his safety. The landing zone was a flat field outside the human military base. Green grass covered the ground, and strange trees with brown bark and green leaves surrounded the clearing. The air was thick and warm, rich with unfamiliar scents. When Vexler stepped out of the shuttle, he saw a small group of humans waiting for him. They were not pointing weapons at him. They were simply standing there, watching with curious eyes. One of them stepped forward. He was older than the others, with gray hair and lines on his face that humans developed with age. He wore a uniform covered with colorful decorations that Vexler assumed indicated rank and honors. His posture was straight and confident, but not aggressive. "Commander Vexler," the human said in a deep voice, "I am General Marcus Chen. Welcome to Earth." Vexler studied the human carefully. He had seen images of humans, of course, but standing face to face with one was different. They were smaller than his kind, softer, with no natural armor or weapons. Their skin came in different shades of brown and pink. Their eyes were strange, round with colored circles in the center. This one's eyes were dark brown, and they held an expression that Vexler could not read. Something warm, something welcoming. "General Chen," Vexler replied, inclining his head in a gesture of respect. "I have come to understand something. I have come to see your prisoners." The general raised his eyebrows. A gesture Vexler had learned indicated surprise. "You want to see how we treat your captured soldiers?" "Yes, I need to see it with my own eyes. I need to understand." General Chen nodded slowly. "All right, follow me. I'll show you everything." They walked through the base together, General Chen on one side, Krathel on the other. Human soldiers stopped what they were doing to stare at Vexler. He was their enemy, the commander of the forces that had been attacking their world for 3 years. He expected hatred in their eyes. He expected fear. He prepared himself for hostility. What he saw instead was curiosity, wide eyes and tilted heads. Some of them even nodded at him respectfully, acknowledging his presence without malice. "Your soldiers do not seem to hate me," Vexler observed. "They're professional," General Chen replied. "And most of them have had contact with your captured troops. Hard to hate an entire species when you've spent an afternoon teaching one of them how to play chess or helped one write a letter home to his family." They reached a large building made of gray stone and metal. Inside, Vexler saw exactly what the spy drones had shown him, but seeing it in person was different. Dominion prisoners were everywhere, but they were not in cells. They were in a large common area with comfortable furniture, soft lighting, and entertainment devices. Some were reading, using translation devices the humans had provided. Some were watching human entertainment on screens, laughing at the moving pictures. Some were talking with human soldiers, gesturing and pointing as they struggled to communicate across the language barrier. A young Dominion female looked up and saw Vexler. Her eyes went wide and she scrambled to her feet, performing the salute of respect. Her arms snapped up to her chest in the traditional gesture. "Commander, we did not know, we did not expect." Other prisoners noticed and jumped up as well. Soon, every captured Dominion soldier in the room was standing at attention, staring at Vexler with expressions of shock and fear. But not fear of the humans, fear of him, fear of what he might think about how comfortable they had become, fear of punishment for appearing to enjoy their captivity. General Chen noticed this reaction. "At ease, everyone. The commander is here as a guest, not an inspector. Please continue what you were doing." The prisoners relaxed slowly, uncertainly, still glancing at Vexler with worried eyes. Vexler looked at his captured soldiers. They were healthy, well-fed. Some of them had clearly gained weight. Their wounds had been treated, their injuries healed. They were wearing clean clothes, not prison uniforms, but simple civilian garments in neutral colors. Their scales were shiny and well-maintained. Their eyes were clear and alert. "You," Vexler said, pointing to the young female who had first noticed him, "come here." She approached nervously, her steps small and hesitant. Up close, he could see that she was young, probably on her first campaign. There was a healing scar on her shoulder where she had taken a projectile wound in battle. The scar was clean and well-tended, not the ragged mess it would have been without proper medical care. "Tell me how you have been treated," Vexler ordered. "Tell me everything. I want to know the truth." She glanced at General Chen, then back at Vexler. "Commander, the humans have been kind to us. They gave us medicine when we were hurt. They give us food 3 times a day, good food, warm and filling. They let us rest. They talk to us." "Talk to you about what?" "Everything, Commander, our homes, our families, what we want to do when the war is over. They showed us pictures of their own families." She hesitated, her voice dropping. "One of them, a male named Jenkins, showed me a picture of his daughter. She is the same age as my own sister back home. He said he hoped they could meet someday when there was peace. He said he hoped our people could be friends." Vexler felt that strange confusion again, even stronger than before. "And what do you feel toward these humans now?" The young female was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was very small. "I do not want to fight them anymore, Commander. I do not want to kill them. They are people just like us. They have families and dreams and fears. They laugh and cry and worry about those they love. They are not monsters. They are not the enemy I was told they were." Vexler spent 3 hours in the prisoner facility. He spoke with dozens of captured Dominion soldiers. He watched humans and prisoners playing games together, sharing meals, even working together to repair a piece of furniture that had broken. He saw them teaching each other words in their different languages, laughing at mispronunciations and celebrating small successes. He watched a human medic carefully change the bandages on a wounded Dominion warrior, speaking softly to ease his discomfort. The warrior was large, a veteran of many battles, but he lay still and trusting under the medic's hands. He watched a human soldier teaching a group of prisoners to play a card game, laughing when they made mistakes and praising them when they understood the rules. He watched a captured Dominion commander, a male named Vredel who had led a battalion before his capture, sitting with a human captain. They were discussing strategy, comparing notes about the battle where Vredel had been captured. They were analyzing it like scholars, not like enemies. The human pointed out where Vredel's tactics had been clever. Vredel admitted where he had made mistakes. "We were outmatched," Vredel said. "Your air support was too effective. We should have waited for darkness." "That might have worked," the human captain agreed. "But your troops fought bravely. The sergeant who held that bridge for 20 minutes, my soldiers are still talking about him. They've never seen anything like it." "He died," Vredel said quietly. "I know. We buried him with military honors, full ceremony. Would you like to see the grave?" Vredel looked up, his eyes wide with shock. You gave him honors, an enemy, a soldier who killed many of your people." "He was a warrior who died bravely defending his comrades. That deserves respect, doesn't it? That deserves honor, regardless of which side he fought on." When Vexler finally left the facility, his mind was spinning. He had come to understand humans, but instead he found himself more confused than ever. Everything he thought he knew about war, about enemies, about the nature of conflict, had been turned upside down. General Chen walked with him back to the shuttle landing area. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors Vexler had never seen before. Orange and pink and gold, reflected off the clouds in brilliant patterns. "Commander," the general said, "I know you came here looking for answers. Did you find any?" Vexler stopped walking. He turned to face the human, studying his lined face and dark eyes. "In my culture, prisoners are resources to be used. When they are no longer useful, they are disposed of. This is the way of the Dominion. This is how we have always operated. It is efficient. It is logical. It wins wars." General Chen nodded. "And you're wondering why we do things differently?" "Yes, it makes no sense. You waste resources feeding and healing your enemies. You spend time and effort making them comfortable. You show them kindness when you could show them nothing at all. Why?" The general was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that Vexler would remember for the rest of his life. "Commander, the way you fight a war determines what kind of peace you get. If we treated your soldiers the way you treat ours, what would happen when the war ended? We'd have a planet full of people who had every reason to hate us. We'd have to keep fighting forever because there would be no way to stop. The hatred would pass from generation to generation. The cycle would never end. But if we treat your soldiers with dignity and respect, something else happens. They go home with a different story. They tell others that the humans were not monsters. They show that kindness is possible even in war. And eventually, maybe, we can find a way to end this. Not just stop fighting, but truly end it. Build something new. You think that is possible, an end to this war? I think it has to be possible, Commander, because the alternative is too terrible to accept. War without end. Hatred without end. Death without purpose. That's not a future worth fighting for. Vexler studied the human's face. Those strange round eyes were filled with something. Hope, perhaps, or maybe just a stubborn refusal to accept defeat. A determination to believe in something better. Your people are very strange, General Chen. So we've been told, many times. Vexler looked back at the building where his soldiers were being held. No, not held. Where they were being cared for, where they were being treated as guests instead of prisoners. I need to think about what I have seen today, he said. I need to consider what it means for the Dominion, for this war, for everything. Take all the time you need, Commander. We're not going anywhere. Vexler boarded his shuttle and returned to his flagship. The stars seemed brighter than before as the vessel climbed through the atmosphere, but the images of what he had seen stayed with him. The young female who did not want to fight anymore. The wounded warrior being tended with gentle hands. The enemy commanders discussing strategy like old friends. And the grave of a fallen Dominion warrior, buried with honors by the very soldiers he had been trying to kill. Something was changing inside Vexler. He did not yet know what it was, but he knew that after today, nothing would ever be quite the same. 2 weeks passed. The war continued, battle after battle, skirmish after skirmish. But Vexler found himself giving orders differently now. When his forces captured human soldiers, he ordered them treated well. Not as well as the humans treated prisoners because the Dominion did not have the infrastructure for that, but better than before. No torture, no starvation, basic medical care, food and water and shelter. His subordinates were confused by these orders. Some even questioned them, though they did not dare do so openly. The Dominion had always treated prisoners one way. Why change now? What had happened to their commander? Vexler did not explain. He was not sure he could. How could he describe what he had seen? How could he explain that watching humans care for their enemies had made him question everything he believed? Then came the Battle of the Northern Coast. It was a major engagement, the largest of the war so far. Dominion forces pushed deep into human territory, trying to capture a key industrial center that produced weapons and vehicles. The fighting was brutal. Both sides took heavy casualties. The sound of explosions rolled across the landscape like thunder. In the chaos, something unexpected happened. A human battalion became surrounded by Dominion forces. They were trapped in a small town, cut off from supplies and reinforcements. The buildings around them were burning. Their ammunition was running low. There was no escape. The Dominion commander on the ground, a colonel named Kreshar, sent a message to the trapped humans. Surrender or be destroyed. There would be no mercy, no quarter. This was the Dominion way. The human commander, a woman named Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Martinez, sent a reply. She said her soldiers would not surrender. They would fight to the last. But she had wounded who could not fight. 37 of them, too injured to move. She asked if the Dominion would allow the wounded to be evacuated under a white flag. Kreshar laughed at this request. He told his officers that the humans were trying to trick them. They were trying to buy time for reinforcements to arrive. He ordered the attack to continue. No mercy, no negotiations. But Vexler heard about this exchange through his communications network, and he did something that shocked everyone in the Dominion fleet. He overruled Kreshar. He ordered the attack halted immediately. He allowed the humans to evacuate their wounded. "Commander, this is madness," Kreshar protested over the communication link, his voice raw with anger. "We have them trapped. We can destroy them completely. This is the perfect opportunity." "And then what?" Vexler replied calmly. "We kill a few hundred more humans and they hate us even more. They fight even harder. They tell stories about our cruelty to their children and their children's children. How does that help us win this war? It is our way. It is how the Dominion operates. We do not show weakness to our enemies. Perhaps our way needs to change. Perhaps what we call strength is actually weakness. Perhaps true strength is something else entirely." The evacuation took 3 hours. Human medical shuttles came under a white flag, their lights blinking in the night. Dominion soldiers watched in silence, their weapons lowered as the humans loaded their wounded onto stretchers and carried them away. No one fired. No one attacked. And then something strange happened. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez, the human commander, walked out of the town under the same white flag. She walked alone, unarmed, straight toward the Dominion lines. Her uniform was dirty and torn. Her face was covered with dust and smoke, but she walked with her back straight and her head high. Kreshar wanted to capture her. He raised his weapon and prepared to give the order. Vexler ordered him to hold. Martinez stopped about 20 meters from the Dominion positions. She looked up at the sky, knowing that Vexler was watching through the spy drones that circled overhead. "Commander Vexler," she called out, her voice carrying across the silent battlefield. "I know you can hear me. You just saved the lives of 47 of my soldiers, wounded men and women who would have died without medical care. I want you to know that I will not forget this. Whatever happens next, however this battle ends, I will not forget." Then she turned and walked back to her lines. No one stopped her. No one fired. The battle resumed at dawn. After 2 more days of fighting, human reinforcements arrived and drove the Dominion forces back. Both sides took heavy losses. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez survived, though she was wounded in the final assault. But something had changed. The humans noticed that the Dominion had allowed the evacuation. They noticed that Vexler had shown mercy when he did not have to, and they began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, the enemy was not as monstrous as they had thought. A month after the battle, Vexler received a message from General Chen. The human wanted to meet again. He said there were things to discuss, important things. This time, the meeting was in neutral territory, a small island in the middle of an ocean, far from the fighting. The water was blue and clear, and strange birds flew overhead. Vexler came with a single aide, Krathel. General Chen came with Lieutenant Colonel Martinez, her arm still in a sling from her wound. They sat across from each other at a simple table under a canvas shelter. No weapons, no guards, just 4 beings trying to understand each other. "Thank you for allowing the evacuation," Martinez said. Her voice was rough but sincere. "Some of those wounded soldiers are still alive because of what you did. They're healing. They're going to go home to their families." Vexler nodded slowly. "I am beginning to understand something, Lieutenant Colonel, something your people seem to know instinctively, something we have forgotten or perhaps never knew." "What's that?" "That war is not just about killing. It is about what comes after the killing stops. The future you create depends on how you fight today." General Chen leaned forward, his eyes intent. "Commander, why are you really here? What do you want?" Vexler was quiet for a long moment. The waves lapped against the shore. The birds called to each other in the sky. Finally, he spoke. "I have been a warrior my entire life. I have served the Dominion faithfully for 40 years. I have conquered worlds and destroyed civilizations. I have done things that would horrify your people. But watching your soldiers, watching how you treat your enemies, watching how you refuse to let go of your humanity, I have begun to question everything I was taught." "Question what?" "Whether the Dominion way is the only way. whether victory through total destruction is really victory at all, whether there might be a different path, a better path. General Chen and Martinez exchanged glances. There was hope in their eyes, but also caution. "Commander," General Chen said carefully, "are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting?" Vexler looked at the humans across the table. These strange, soft creatures who had somehow managed to hold off the Dominion fleet for 3 years, who treated their enemies like guests, who buried fallen warriors with honors, who wept for dying children, even when those children were their enemies. "I am suggesting," Vexler said slowly, "that perhaps it is time to find a way to end this war, not with victory or defeat, but with something neither of our peoples has ever tried before." "What would that be?" "Peace." The word hung in the air between them. It was a simple word, but it meant everything. Peace. Not conquest, not submission, not the silence of the grave, but true peace where both sides could live without fear. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez spoke first. "Commander, do you have the authority to negotiate peace?" "No," Vexler admitted. "The High Council would never approve such a thing. They would see it as weakness. They would see it as betrayal. But I am not the only one who has been questioning our ways. There are others in the Dominion who have seen what I have seen, who have been affected by how your soldiers treat our captured warriors. The stories are spreading. The seeds have been planted." "Seeds?" "Your kindness is more dangerous than your weapons, General. Your soldiers befriend our prisoners, and those prisoners go home changed. They tell others what they experienced. They question the old ways. They wonder if the humans are really the monsters we were told they were. They wonder if there might be another way to live." General Chen smiled slightly. "We never thought of it as a weapon. We just thought of it as being decent." "I know. That is what makes it so effective. You cannot defend against sincerity. You cannot armor yourself against genuine compassion." The meeting lasted for 3 more hours. Nothing was decided, nothing was agreed upon. But for the first time since the war began, 2 enemies sat together and talked about what might come after. They talked about what peace might look like, what cooperation might achieve, what the future could be if they built it together instead of fighting over the ruins. As Vexler returned to his shuttle, Martinez called out to him. "Commander, may I ask you something?" "Yes." "That young female soldier you spoke with at the prisoner facility, the one who said she didn't want to fight anymore, what happened to her?" Vexler paused, his foot on the shuttle's ramp. "She was released with the other prisoners. She went home to her family. And she is now a speaker for peace. She travels among our people, telling them about how the humans treated her. She shows them pictures of the human soldier who befriended her and the picture of his daughter. She tells them that the humans are not our enemies. They are just people like us, trying to protect their home and their families." Martinez smiled. "That's good to hear." "It is dangerous," Vexler said. "The old powers in the Dominion do not like such talk. They call it treasonous. They call it weakness. But it is spreading anyway, like a fire that cannot be stopped, like water that finds its way through every crack." He boarded his shuttle and lifted off into the sky. Below him, the 2 humans watched him go, their figures growing smaller until they were just dots on the island. "Do you think this is real?" Martinez asked. "Do you think he actually wants peace, or is this some kind of trick?" General Chen was quiet for a long moment, watching the shuttle disappear into the clouds. Then he said, "I think something broke inside him when he saw how we treat prisoners. I think he realized that there's another way to exist in this universe. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. It changes you." "So what do we do?" "We keep doing what we've been doing. We keep fighting when we have to, but we never stop treating them like people. We never stop showing them that there's another way. And maybe, just maybe, we change enough minds that peace becomes possible." Martinez looked up at the sky, where Vexler's shuttle had disappeared. "Humanity's secret weapon," she said softly, "kindness." General Chen nodded. It's won us more battles than bullets ever did. 6 months later, the war ended. Not with the total victory the Dominion had always sought, not with the desperate survival humanity had feared, but with something unprecedented in galactic history. A negotiated peace. The terms were simple but profound. The Dominion withdrew from Earth's territory. In exchange, humanity agreed to share certain technologies and establish diplomatic relations. Both sides agreed to release all prisoners. Both sides agreed to work toward a future of cooperation instead of conflict. The prisoner releases became famous throughout the galaxy. When Dominion soldiers came home, they did not come home broken or traumatized. They came home healthy, well-fed, and full of stories about human kindness. They spoke of soldiers who had shared their food, medical personnel who had worked for hours to save alien lives, guards who had become friends. Many of them stayed in contact with the humans they had met. They exchanged messages across the void of space, shared pictures of their families, told stories about their lives. Some even visited each other. Once travel between the two territories became possible. Former enemies became friends. Former soldiers became ambassadors. Commander Vexler retired from the military soon after the war ended. He became an ambassador himself, working to strengthen relations between the Dominion and Earth. He visited human cities, met human families, learned human customs. He ate human food and listened to human music and watched human children play. And everywhere he went, he told the story of what he had witnessed. How human soldiers had bonded with captured enemies like family. How kindness had achieved what weapons could not. How compassion had changed the course of history. They beat us, he would say to anyone who would listen. Not with superior technology or greater numbers. They beat us with something we never expected. They showed us that we could be better than we were. They showed us that there was another way. General Chen retired too. He and Vexler became unlikely friends, meeting regularly to talk about the old days and the new peace. They would sit together for hours, two old warriors who had once tried to kill each other, now sharing drinks and memories and hopes for the future. One day, years after the war ended, Vexler asked General Chen a question that had been bothering him for a long time. When the war started and your people were facing our fleets, you were afraid. I know you were. Our technology was superior. Our numbers were greater. Your defeat seemed certain. So why did you treat our prisoners so well? Why did you waste resources on kindness when you could have used them for fighting? General Chen thought about it for a long moment. The sun was setting outside the window of his home, painting the room in warm golden light. Because that's who we are, he finally said. Or at least that's who we try to be. We don't always succeed. We've made terrible mistakes in our history. We've been cruel and vicious and everything you'd expect from a species like ours. But we keep trying to be better. We keep believing that kindness matters even when it's hard, even when it doesn't make strategic sense, even when it seems like weakness. But why? What drives this belief? General Chen smiled. Because the alternative is becoming monsters, and we'd rather lose a war than lose our humanity. We'd rather die as good people than survive as something we couldn't recognize. Vexler considered this for a long time. Outside, children were playing in the street, human children and Dominion hatchlings together. Their laughter drifted through the open window. Your word for it is humanity, he said. In our language, we do not have a word for this concept. We did not know it existed. We did not know it was possible. What would you call it now? Vexler thought about all he had seen. The soldiers sharing meals with prisoners. The medics working through the night to save enemy lives. The graves with military honors. The kindness that had no logical purpose except to affirm that all beings had value. I would call it hope, he finally said. The belief that tomorrow can be better than today, that enemies can become friends, that there is something worth preserving in every being, no matter which side they fight on. the faith that compassion is stronger than hatred. General Chen nodded. That's as good a definition as any. They sat in silence for a while, two old soldiers who had once been enemies. The sun continued to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere in the distance, children were playing. Human children and Dominion hatchlings together, their differences forgotten in the simple joy of games and laughter. You know, Vexler said, when this all started I thought I understood war. I thought I understood conquest. I thought I understood power. I thought I knew everything that mattered. And now I know that I understood nothing. The true power was never in our weapons or our fleets. It was in your soldiers sitting with scared prisoners and telling them everything would be all right. It was in your medics refusing to let enemy wounded die. It was in your general meeting with your enemy and treating him like an equal. That was power. That was strength. Everything else was just noise. General Chen placed a hand on Vexler's arm, a human gesture of friendship that Vexler had come to understand and appreciate. The funny thing is, General Chen said, we didn't do it to win. We did it because it was right. Because those prisoners were someone's children, someone's friends, someone's family. Because treating them with cruelty would have made us into something we didn't want to be. Victory wasn't the point. Being good people was the point. And yet you did win. We all won, Vexler. Every being who gets to live in peace instead of dying in war, we all won. Every child who gets to grow up in a galaxy without fear, we all won. Vexler watched the children playing in the distance. Human and Dominion, impossible enemies, now running and laughing together as if war had never existed, as if hatred had never divided them, as if they had always been friends. Perhaps that is the true victory, he said. Not conquering, not destroying, but building something better than what came before. General Chen smiled. Now you understand humanity. And in that moment, watching children play under a setting sun, Vexler thought that perhaps he finally did. The story of the human soldiers and their prisoners became a legend throughout the galaxy. Other species heard about it and wondered. Some dismissed it as propaganda, too good to be true. Others investigated and found that it was true, every word of it. They came to Earth to see for themselves, and they left changed. And slowly, over generations, something changed in the way the galaxy worked. Species that had always treated war as total destruction began to consider alternatives. The concept of honorable treatment for enemies spread from world to world. The idea that kindness could be strength took root in 100 different cultures. They called it the human way. Some adopted it fully, transforming their societies. Some modified it, adapting it to their own traditions. Some rejected it entirely, clinging to the old ways. But the seed had been planted. The idea was out there, and ideas once born cannot be killed. Kindness could be strength. Mercy could win victories. Treating enemies like family could end wars that weapons never could. These were no longer abstract concepts. They were proven facts, demonstrated by a small species on a small planet that had refused to become monsters even when facing destruction. And it all started with a confused alien commander, standing in a prisoner facility, watching human soldiers share their food and their lives with those they had captured. It started with a question that had no logical answer. Why would you show kindness to your enemy? The answer, Vexler learned, was simple. Because kindness is never wasted. Because compassion creates more compassion. Because the way you treat others determines who you become. Because tomorrow can always be better than today if you choose to make it so. Humanity, in the end, conquered not with weapons but with something far more powerful. They conquered with love.